Hi, everyone. My name is Matt Haynes, and this is a short video from the tall narrator. I stand at 6 feet 10 inches, and hopefully, the massive impact that I have on vertical space is also reflected in the audio sphere. So, this is part of what I call the process project. This is where I show you folks my process in narrating samples of text. And then on video number 2 of each of these samples, we get to interview the author as to their process. With each video with the sample that I read, I'll show you a different focus that I have for each. There's many different focuses that I put into a text when I'm preparing it. This week's focus is on breathing. You'll notice that I have an asterisk for the text. Now, the text is paragraphed just for your viewing convenience, but in a normal sentence flow, I'll put the asterisk. And many times it will follow the grammar. So we have a comma, I'll take a pause. It was a surprise to no one when the conscript officer arrived at their small village that spring, setting up in the square. Okay, so that's pretty no-brainer-ish. Now, sometimes it's important to just let the momentum of a pair of short sentences take over and then find where to breathe for the pause. So we have here, "Don't despair, Jord. I've taught you well. You'll do fine." So I do need to breathe, right? But I am choosing to take "you'll do fine" as the turning point so that the father can really land the advice to his son. Now, the other thing is sometimes where there isn't even a paragraph break, I will take between sentences a slightly longer breath, almost as if there's a paragraph break, and that's just to change the mood. So we have here, I'll bring it back so Aaron can use it. Jord promised. A dark thought struck him as he took the sword. So you'll be hearing that in the narration from The Ruthless Ring.
Prologue. It was a surprise to no one when the conscript officer arrived at their small village that spring, setting up in the square. He had come every year for the past 50, while the war raged to the east, to pluck the young ones who'd come of age. The word spread through the village like wildfire. It was time to report to duty. The army chewed up the youth of the land and spit them out. Despite that, the war raged year after year. They said the empire was strong because of mandatory service, but the wounded and traumatized soldiers told a different story. There were plenty of empty chairs at dinner tables and new gravestones in the churchyard. Those were the ones lucky enough to have been returned home for a proper burial. Jord picked up a pile of cow manure and dirty hay with his pitchfork, throwing it onto the wheelbarrow. His mother planted the garden for vegetables to keep them going, as she had every spring for as long as he could remember. His da heard his sigh from his workbench, where he was mending a scythe. "Don't despair, Jord. I've taught you well. You'll do fine." Mason Broadbent, father of 5, farmer of wheat, and veteran of the never-ending war, said. Today his voice was full of weariness, for they had worked hard in the sun. "I'm not despairing," Jord answered sullenly, picking up another cow pie and tossing it carefully. "I served in the army. It's been a long time now, but I still remember it like it was yesterday. You'll learn some good skills, make some lifelong friends, and learn some discipline. You'll come back with a bit of coin in your pocket, and then you can marry your girl," his da said, squinting at his eldest son in the dim light of the barn. "I'm not cut out for the army, da," Jord said, putting the pitchfork back on the hook. "Farming is in my blood. I'm a farmer through and through. I just want to marry Lorien and get on with my life." Lorien was 16 and anxious to marry, but there was no getting out of it for Jord. They had decided they would wait and see if he returned before starting their life together. It was what a lot of young couples did. His Da shook his head. "Let me show you something," he said, leading him to the back room. His Da's old chest, filled with his most prized personal possessions, was kept here, under lock and key. Mumbling, he reached into his pocket for his key ring and slid the long brass key into the padlock. It opened with a click and then fell to the floor. His Da pushed open the trunk, and they both looked inside. Old books, pieces of outdated armor, and the remains of broken spears he had taken as trophies from the field of battle filled the trunk. He smiled and said, "It's been 20 long years since any of this saw the light of day. I'm sure the army will outfit you with better equipment. But this is what I want you to have." He pulled out a long package wrapped in a length of woolen cloth and tied with a piece of burlap rope. Mason Broadbent untied the rope, and then quickly unrolled the cloth almost reverently. This was my Da's sword. He carried it through the Great War, and he gave it to me when it was my turn to fight. A farmer doesn't have much use for a sword. Mason paused, and reached over and clasped his son's shoulder, his eyes a bit teary. "I've kept it all this time, knowing my sons might be called to serve the Empire. I want you to have it." George took it hesitantly, feeling the weapon's weight. The blade needed a bit of polishing, but the sword fit right in his hand. It was jeweled at the hilt with a bit of red jade. George was surprised his father hadn't pried the stones out and sold them. Things were never easy on the Broadbent holding. He was the oldest of the 3 brothers and 2 sisters. His brothers would go to war soon. "I'll bring it back, so Aaron can use it," George promised. A dark thought struck him as he took the sword. It was more likely he would become just another nameless corpse on the battlefield, cut down in his prime by the grinding war with the Stoven Kingdom.
That is The Ruthless Ring. More info about that book and the author in the description of the video. Next, we will get to see what the author had in mind when preparing this epic. And as your narrator, I hope that my voice and your ears will meet again real soon.